There's nothing more inspiring in the world than those heroes who dedicate their lives to saving others. Those heroes who, no matter the acts we committed, are always there to lend a hand. Those heroes who, the more they help, somehow make the world better?
一緒に過ごせて楽しかった。でもやっぱ僕じゃダメだったな。一人よがりで久世さんを助けようとして結局何もできなかった。助けてあげようなんて思うのが違ったんだ。
You said that to me so many times. Stop telling lies about how everything is for my sake. So coming to the castle, fighting Julius, and using magic. Are you trying to say that was all for me? Why? I never asked you to do any of that.
What the hell is that about? Yeah, he's right. Keep him out.
2025 brought us a ton of anime, and while some of them were straight up trash,
Wait.
others were pure cinema, and Takopi's original sin is definitely one of them. Despite the cute and innocent art style this anime has, it shows us a tragic story that hides a lot of truths about our lives. And in this video, I'm going to talk about one of them. The story takes us to an alien named Takopi, that after arriving on Earth with the intention of bringing joy, he meets Shizuka Yusei, a 9-year-old girl with whom he forms a new friendship. But the more time they spend together, the darker that connection becomes. Shizuka is bullied by one of her classmates, Marina Hirarasaka, who makes her life impossible at school due to intimate situations that connect Marina's family problems with Shizuka's. But now I'm not going to get into the details of those events. In this video, I want to focus on a character who challenges a behavior that has been presented to us for decades as good. This character is Naoki Eizuma. He's introduced right in the middle of the conflict between Marina and Shizuka, where he tries to help Shizuka multiple times without any success. However, everything changes when the tragedy of Marina's murder occurs. He is the first and only person to realize what happened, because he ends up becoming an accomplice in covering up the crime.
What the f?
Yeah, certainly. It's mind-blowing. How can you help someone hide a fucking body? You might think this kid is a psychopath, or maybe a troll singer, and the latter may actually be true. But the incredible thing is that when you understand who Naoki is, his story, his scars, and his psychological function, his actions stops looking like madness and start looking like distorted human logic. And that's why this character is such a great example of how helping others is not always good. To set the scene, we need to go back to Naoki's story to understand what led him to commit acts that would, in the future, ruin his life and the lives of his loved ones. Naoki Eizuma is the younger of two brothers in a family of doctors. Because of this profession, one that demands discipline, precision, and a total focus on results, his parents push their children to be perfect in their studies, something that comes easily to the older son, Junya Eizuma. In Naoki's own words, his brother is a starring prodigy. So Naoki constantly receives comparative comments from his family, especially from his mother. This slowly planted the seed in Naoki's of an attachment where emotional security is bugged with performance. However, no matter how much he studied, Naoki could never match his brother's grades. Even being the best in his class, he was unable to see the approval surrounding him because of the immense importance he placed on his mother's validation. This approval is symbolized by the pancakes she always made for his brother, something that created an immense desire in Naoki to get those pancakes. But one day, returning to the classroom, he finds a shocking scene.
東くん、そのメガネもブランドもの？
いや、メガネ
この人間のクズ、よくのうのうと学校なんて来れるよな。死ね。
He sees one of his classmates being bullied. The situation motivates him to step into his savior role because, let's remember, Naoki grew up in an environment where his family saves lives, so he internalizes the responsibility too. He sets out to help Shizuka multiple times, yet every single attempt, both to gain his mother's approval and to help Shizuka, ends in failure. These attempts to help Shizuka seem to come from a healthy motivation, where he wants to improve someone's life. And while that is true at first, over time it becomes an excuse to keep helping her, because deep down, due to the physical similarity between Shizuka and his mother, his attempts are no longer guided by the desire to help her, but by the selfish desire to obtain validation from a mother figure. In clinical terms, this is known as transference, explained by Sigmund Freud, where the other person acts as a screen onto which all wounds are projected. Thus, what starts as a moral endeavor turns into an attempt at personal repair. After several failed attempts, Naoki enters a moment of frustration.
どうせ変わらないよ。じゃあ僕は母によく似た女の子一人にすら期待してもらえない。
And although that doesn't make him give up on his mission, it does create a void that will make him lose his own identity. Because the moment he follows Marina and Shizuka into the woods, he comes across a stunning image. Shizuka, along with that alien with tentacles, has murdered Marina. As you can see now, his behavior starts to make sense. As soon as he sees the terrifying scene, he tries not to interfere and suggests that Shizuka turn herself into the police. But with a few simple words,
東くん、他にはどんなのがあるの？
他？
自首じゃないやつ。私本とかわかんないから。東くんは詳しそう。
Shizuka completely reconfigures Naoki's self-esteem. For the first time, his actions seems to give him existence by being recognized by her, and that drives him to try to save her again, even if that means covering up a murder.
東くん、
お兄ちゃんはできたのに。
お願い。東くんしかいないの。助けて。
僕ならできる。
This moment is where we see the most important concept in this topic, the savior complex. In clinical terms, the savior complex is a persistent pattern in which a person feels a compulsive need to fix, rescue, or solve other people's problems, even without being asked. And most importantly, that action ends up working more to satisfy the savior's internal needs than to genuinely help the other person. That is why he starts committing crimes such as hiding a body or planning an illegal trip to Tokyo, just to hold onto the case that finally recognizes him and to avoid losing the person who now represents the approving mother. This complex usually happens when we try to help someone, but it can be a bit tricky to set the traits that help us identify it. That's why I compiled these 6 mechanisms that a person with this complex normally uses, taking Naoki as the example. The first of these is anxious attachment. We see this in how Naoki's maternal approval comes as a reward and not as an unconditional affection. This creates a drive where self-worth depends on external factors, and any threat to that recognition generates desperation to fix the relationship through performance or rescue. The second mechanism is transference. Naoki sees the image of his mother in Shizuka. This causes his attempt to help to no longer to be about Shizuka and to become a way to repair the relationship with the mother he never had. That's why he insists with all limits, because he is not helping the real person, but the image that returns validation to him. The third, fourth, and fifth mechanisms are seen at the moment Naoki decides to help Shizuka. The third is the need for validation and identity construction. Naoki's identity as a savior is solidified because it confirms that he exists. The act of helping stops being altruistic and becomes the means to obtain a purpose, a role, and with that, an identity that defines him. The fourth mechanism is cognitive distortion. The moment he does morally wrong things like hiding a body, he tries to justify them with the excuse that he is helping Shizuka, but in reality, he is being biased by his desire for validation. The fifth mechanism is paternalization. Naoki, being in the savior role, begins to decide for the other person what to do, when, and how. We see this when his decisions to hide the truth and control the evidence substitute Shizuka's will and the agenda of the situation, thus transforming help into control. But that desire to gain control in a situation like this is born from a psychological imbalance, something that the body and mind will make him pay for, because Naoki experiences the sixth and final mechanism, which is known in psychology as burnout. The constant effort to maintain control in a complex situation slowly wears him down, both mentally and emotionally, worsening his thoughts and decisions to the point where, the moment he finds out Mina's body has been found, he completely collapses. This overwhelming situation makes Naoki overthink everything, leading him to fail an exam, his only path to his mother validation. This leaves him shocked, with fear running through his mind, expecting the worst reaction from his mother upon seeing his failure. But reality surprises him. For the first time in his life, his mother gives him the symbol of approval he has desired his whole life: some delicious pancakes. But a second later, the reward crumbles. His mother interprets his failure as immaturity and believes Naoki failed to get attention. That's why she decides once and for all to give up on the expectations she had for him. And it's at that instant that the pancakes, which before looked bright, warm, almost magical, become repulsive. This scene is incredible. The anime uses it as a perfect metaphor. The pancakes were never valuable in themselves. They were valuable for what they represented: validation. And when the validation disappears, the pancakes lose their flavor. They lose their value, causing Naoki to vomit them up immediately. Emotionally destroyed, he heads towards the person he believes is the only one who trusts him, Shizuka. And afraid of losing approval from anyone else, Naoki promises he will do everything possible to help her, something that Shizuka takes advantage of to make him responsible for the murder, handing him the evidence. Naoki has no choice but to accept it, since, from his perspective, he has nothing left to lose. Just one step away from completely ruining his life, his brother appears, his lifelong rival, but also the only person who truly understands him. He gives him the space to say what he feels, a space where he is valued, not for the results of his efforts, but for his pure presence. And that redeems Naoki from his actions. Finally, he frees himself from all that rotten burden he has been carrying on his back. Naoki confesses to the murder, but by telling the truth, betraying and exposing Shizuka as a result. And it is at that moment that we discover a sad truth. When Shizuka learns of Naoki's betrayal, she doesn't cry, she doesn't suffer, she doesn't get angry. She simply runs away to look for the only thing she truly cares about: her dog, Chappie. This gives us the understanding that Naoki destroyed his life for someone who never valued him. In that process of trying to help Shizuka, he not only destroyed himself mentally and emotionally, he also destroyed his family. His mother stopped sleeping, his father closed the clinic because of rumors, and his brothers lost the chance to go to university. All for helping from a place of emptiness. This phenomenon is known as the rescue triangle, proposed by Stephen B. Carman, which explains that by helping others from your own wound without asking permission and without setting limits, you immerse yourself in the role of the savior and the other in the victim, where both lose agency. Your help stops being a human act and becomes an act of control. You take away the other person's ability to solve their own problems, and you wear yourself out trying to fix what is not your responsibility. In the end, Naoki's story is not that of a psychopath. It is the story of a child who learned that love is earned with sacrifice, and he sacrificed everything: his freedom, his morals, his future, and his family. And the saddest part, he sacrificed his own identity to obtain a love that never existed. This, believe it or not, is more common than it seems. And to show you, I'm going to analyze another character who demonstrates how helping others isn't always the best option. Subaru Natsuki. Subaru is a 17-year-old boy who goes from buying ramen in a convenience store to waking up in a completely different world, the kingdom of Lugunica. At first, instead of looking scared or worried, he looks excited because he thinks he's in an isekai where he'll be the strongest protagonist with the most overpowered superpowers in that world, and he's going to become the most acclaimed hero in the whole country.
Where's that money from? You can't use that stuff out here in Lagunica.
This place is for demi-humans only! Ow! My eye! Can't see!
Yep, he can read the language of that world, he doesn't have money that works in that world, and he doesn't have any special powers. And believing the situation couldn't get worse, he gets robbed. Well, almost, because a silver-haired elf saves him just in time. Emilia, a candidate for the royal selection who helps Subaru without expecting anything in return, something that greatly moves him. So, taking advantage of the fact that Emilia is looking for a lost insignia that is key for her candidacy, the compelling need is born in him to return the favor, starring a new adventure that will create a new friendship between the two. What's the worst that could happen? Before they can process it, the two are stabbed to the point of being killed. And then the impossible happens. Subaru wakes up at the beginning, in front of the fruit stand, with all his memories intact, thus discovering his curse, return by death. Each death resets him in time, retaining only the memories of his previous deaths. Just with this, we can see Subaru's way of being. He doesn't start helping by asking, listening, and understanding Emilia. He begins to project everything he needs onto her, a purpose, a reason to exist, and the validation he didn't have in his previous lives, showing us the second mechanism we saw in Naoki: transference. This leads him to help Emilia out of ignorance, because he doesn't really know how to help her or what she truly needs, moving only by what he thinks she needs. Death after death, Subaru wears himself out. The fact that he's repeating the trauma, feeling pain, seeing blood, dying and returning leads him to the last mechanism, pure emotional burnout. Each return leaves him more emotionally and mentally fragile, causing his judgment to be completely clouded, pushing him to actions that are less and less strategic and more impulsive. This is demonstrated in the royal selection where Emilia, being judged for her resemblance to the Witch of Envy, is publicly humiliated. But Subaru, blinded by his savior complex, not only interrupts a sacred ceremony full of the most powerful nobility and knights in the kingdom, but out of his ignorance begins to insult everyone, self-proclaiming himself Emilia's knight without having the title, the honor, or the strength to back it up, all for the desire to confirm his inner hero, leaving the fourth mechanism. This causes Julius, the knight, to challenge him to a duel to teach him manners, leading to one of the most epic battles in the entire anime. He gets humbled, immediately demonstrating that good intentions without capability or understanding are completely useless. When he wakes up, he expects Emilia to thank him for his sacrifice, but Emilia, heartbroken, finally confronts him with the truth he refused to see.
俺だったら君のために何かしてあげたいってそうやって
私のために自分のためでしょ
It is at that moment that we can see the third mechanism. Subaru realizes that he never saw her. He only saw a princess he needed to save to feel like the protagonist of his own story. Helping him was not an act of love. It was an act of selfishness to fill his void. And that selfishness, born of ignorance and trauma, ended up pushing away the only person he wanted to protect. This is something we already saw with Naoki's example. They both help from an internal hole. Naoki helps for material validation, while Subaru helps due to an existential void. This causes their help to end up harming their loved ones and themselves. But what happens when your job, your identity, and your purpose in life is literally to save people? Will the same thing happen to them as it did to the previous examples? Well, Izuku Midoriya can give us an answer to this question. Unlike Naoki or Subaru, Deku studies and trains to save lives, with his quirk inherited from All Might, the One for All. And with that power, he also inherits a gigantic moral burden. However, Deku has a serious problem. His altruism is not healthy, it's pathological. Early in the series, we see how every time he uses his power to save someone, he breaks his bones, literally. This is a problem he constantly faces. A clear example is at the training camp where Deku faces a child named Kota, who hates heroes because his parents died trying to be brave. This causes Kota to adopt a cold and violent behavior toward the students, especially towards Deku. Since Deku's attempts to connect with him end in rejection and even in aggression. But when the villains led by Shigaraki attack the students for the second time, Kota is cornered by one of them, the same villain who murdered his parents. Muscular, yet without remorse or doubt, Deku saves him, defeating the villain, but he ends up gravely injured to the point of having almost irreparable arms. It is here that we see the few but serious consequences of his approach to helping, as characters like Aizawa or Recovery Girl rightly warn him. If he breaks himself with his quirk to save one person, he will be unable to save other people, or even that same one person. Because in many scenes like this, Deku put his physical health on the back burner due to an obsession with fulfilling his duty. This turns into an instant physical burnout, something he gradually improves upon, since he was aware of the consequences of acting this way. However, this is not the only mechanism we can see in Deku. After Japan collapses because villains govern the streets, Deku, knowing that the final villain, All for One, is looking for him, makes a drastic decision, becoming a lone vigilante. He stops eating, he stops sleeping, all just to save his loved ones, who he believes he's protecting. But psychologically, this is the fifth mechanism, paternalization. Deku decides unilaterally that his friends and citizens with UA are in danger because they're not strong enough to fight by his sides, thus stripping them of their agency. In short, he takes away their opportunity to decide their own destiny. He convinces himself that he is the only necessary martyr, enrolling in a toxic solitude, believing that this is being a hero, when in reality, he is just slowly killing himself with anxiety and excessive responsibility. But then, does this mean that helping people is not the best option? Does it mean that if we help others, we will end up hurting ourselves and our loved ones, whether physically, mentally, or emotionally? Well, if we will look at all the exact moments where these characters have helped and made the situation worse, it's not simply because they helped. It's because that help was not directed towards the other person's well-being, but towards their own. They were doing it to fill a void that made them feel insufficient, to confirm an identity that gave them purpose, to feel useful for the first time in their lives. And that, instead of helping people in danger, makes them lose their rights, lose their autonomy, and even lose their own lives. And it is thanks to these mistakes that they were able to analyze and change in order to truly help. Like Naoki, who, after slowly destroying himself by helping someone who didn't value his effort, understood that it was impossible to save someone while he himself remained submerged in a bottomless pit. Or Subaru, who after countless mistakes and deaths learned that to help someone, he first has to listen to and understand them so he can see the person's true problem, not his own. And Deku, who learned that by overextending his empathy, he blinded himself when making vital decisions that prevented him from helping more people or even took away the agency of others. And it was thanks to this that he took the responsibility to change his actions, learning to make the necessary decision to help people without breaking himself. So the truth that these characters leave us with is that in order to help others in a healthy and effective way, it is better to stop taking the easy path of helping others from an internal desire and start taking the difficult path of helping oneself first.